Hey guys, Duke Delayed here for the Intimacy Liberation Army. Today we're talking about getting your ideal partner. I've got a little worksheet, I think. Otherwise, I'm just going to tell you what to do in the video. The worksheet will be in the link in the description. I was on a phone call with one of my clients today, and he was prepping for, he's trying to get a long-term relationship, trying to get married. And so he's going out on dates. He's talking to these girls over, course of weeks and stuff. And he was saying that one of the girls was getting really critical, and he didn't like the way that she talked to him, but he didn't know how to deal with it because he was afraid that he was going to get run over and, get into a relationship. And he was setting a bad precedent because she was kind of able to make him feel anxious and disrespected. And I said, well, then why don't you ask her to communicate in a different way? And he said, oh, I just don't know how. And I said, well, when you talk to me like that, I feel anxious and I feel disrespected, like I'm not capable. And I'd appreciate if you talk to me in this other way. And like, if you state your needs, just state your needs, and don't tell me that I should be doing something or I'm wrong for thinking the way that I'm thinking. Because if we can't have an open conversation about it, it's going to be very difficult for us to move forward and grow. And he said, that makes a lot of sense. And I was like, yeah, you can openly, honestly communicate with people that you're going to try to make your wife, like it's a little different thing when you're doing power dynamics and, hanging out with drunk girls at clubs and, trying to, have little situationships and adventures. But like, if you're talking about like getting married and who's going to be the mother of your children, it's like one of the most important decisions you're going to make in your whole life. So I brought up this thing. I've had this product a while back. It was on Udemy called Dating with Confidence. And in it, there was just a whole bunch of exercises to kind of get some self-awareness, get some knowledge about what you wanted and then what you wanted in your relationship. And so I figured I'd cap off the self-awareness month in January by going through some practical exercises so that you can get those things handled in your own mind. Because once you kind of know where you stand and what your values and what your core interests are in those places, then you'll be able to articulate them clearly when you're talking to other people about it. And so the exercise I want you guys to do today is the ideal partner exercise. Tomorrow we're going to work on the relationship as a whole and try to find ways to co-create things. But today, if you had no restrictions, no limits, so you didn't have to listen to any of your insecurities, what would you want your ideal partner to be like? What are the traits that you would like them to have? And I'm not talking about like, so some people try to find partners because they had all bad partners in the past, so they just want a partner who doesn't do those things. Like, oh, my ex was narcissistic and controlling and abusive, and so I want somebody who's, not controlling at all. Okay, well, that's not actually what you want. It's born out of a place of scarcity. It's born out of a place of fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Right? You're stuck in your survival mode, and when you are trying to find a partner that won't trigger those things, that's not necessarily your ideal partner, right? Not something that you want. On the flip side, they'll be like, oh, I have these great relationships, and I just want her to be like those relationships and not to fuck up like these other girls, right? And that's, again, just kind of looking back at your past going, okay, well, I want a girl who is fully submissive and does whatever I tell her to do and won't give me a lot of bullshit and cooks and whatever. And okay, great. But is that actually what you want? I would invite you to ask questions, especially if you're looking for a long-term relationship. Ask questions like, what kind of woman or what kind of partner am I going to have that is going to handle some bullshit, right? Like, my mom died probably 5 months ago, and my partner was able to kind of stand by my side and support me as I got depressed and went through my stages of grief and stuff. And there are many women that I have had sexual and other types of relationships with that I could not count on to stand in my corner for that type of thing. You guys will face some things together. There's a lot of abortions, miscarriages, the loss of a pet. Like, there's all these things that can happen that if this woman that you're in a long-term relationship with, is she going to be the kind of woman that's going to be able to step up and carry you emotionally when some bullshit happens? And is she going to be able to be carried emotionally when some bullshit happens? Because that's some serious shit. Like, all of us, ideally, are going to see our parents die, right? We probably shouldn't die before our parents, theoretically, right? No, parents should never outlive their kids. Yeah, like that. So it's going to be tragedy coming at some point. And as we get older, we get into our 30s or our 40s, people start dying around us, and we have to deal with that loss. We have to deal with grief, and who we choose as a partner can either make that a good situation and supportive and a human experience, or they can make it much worse, right? Because they're not able to deal as well, and then you have this fighting and infighting back and forth. What happens again? Another thing to consider is like what happens when you get into financial trouble. What happens when you get debts that you can't pay off quickly? What happens when you lose your job for some reason that is catastrophic, right? I have friends who are like delivery drivers. A guy who works for the post office, and if he like sprains his ankle, he's out of work for like a month, right? And because he has to walk around for fucking miles and miles all day. That's his job. And what would happen if he got into a weird financial crunch? Would his partner step up and support him emotionally and bring the team together to get through the issues that are coming up because of the inability to pay the bills quickly? Or is she going to make life worse? And those are the kind of questions you want to ask when you're talking about ideal partners. I'm not saying like, oh, yeah, she's got to be fucking super hot and she's got to like sex like every day and like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about long-term committed partner. What you guys are going to have to face some bullshit and suffering together. Is she geared to do that? Are you geared to do that? I got a conversation with one of my clients today, or I guess it was today. And he was in the game for a long time. He ended up trying to get married, and then they broke up, and then he did it again with a different girl, and they broke up. I've known him for like 9 years. He's not my client currently. He was my client then. And so he calls me today, and he's like, hey, yeah, I'm back in the game, and I'm really good at it, but like it's just not fulfilling, and I'm going through all this stuff, and I was like, yeah. So, like, what do you actually want? And he's like, well, I want to not be afraid. And I'm like, you literally are like really good at this. Like, like going out and getting laid is pretty easy for you. Going out and getting girls to want to marry you after a few months is also easy for you. What do you mean you got to get good at this, right? You're already good at this. And he's like, yeah, but they just don't seem to work out or whatever. I'm like, oh, that's humanity, man. Like, you got to normally in the beginnings of this stuff when people hire me, men's problem is their inability to approach and inability to lead in the beginning, and women's problem is generally the inability to pick well. Their filtration process is sometimes broken, trauma based or whatever. And so this guy's problem was actually that he wasn't self-aware enough to pick well. He liked the attention, he liked the sex, and then he'd be like, okay, let's see if this marriage path is going to work out. And he didn't evaluate them to see if they're going to be proper marriage partners. And by proper, I don't mean there's a right and wrong, by what he was desiring and how he was communicating and indicating growth. And so, like I said, there's a bunch of different ways to choose partners, but I think one of the best ways to do it is to do some introspection and get some self-awareness around what you actually want in a partner, and then decide who the person you'd have to be in order to maintain that partner. And you guys both may need to grow. Like, you might need to grow up, right? If you want a woman to follow your lead, but you're not leading anywhere, You're never going to find a self-respecting woman who wants to follow a masculine role if you're not showing your ability to maintain that role, right? Like, so you might have to grow up a little bit and you might have to stop living fantasy land and become the kind of guy that attracts the kind of girl you want, right? But anyway, this is the exercise, ideal partner exercise. You're going to go write down the description of your ideal partner. I'm going to look at my notes real fast. Oh, yeah. So you think about the physical characteristics, the character, the hobbies, the morals, right? But I really want you to dig deep on the values, on what kind of person is she when times get tough? When you have to face some bullshit, is she a support or is she something you got to drag through it? Is she going to flip out at every single thing that goes on suffering in life and you're going to have to carry her and you? If the kids go crazy, and is she just going to become another child in the relationship, or is she going to step up and co-parent with you, right? Um, think about these things, right? So write down all the characteristics of your ideal partner. If you didn't have to worry about any of your insecurities, you didn't have to worry about anything that like you feel like, oh, I don't deserve that, I can't have that, whatever. If your ideal partner is a full-blown businesswoman who's a fucking ball buster and like, you know, only has a little bit of time for you a week and you guys like to be a fucking power couple, that's fine. If you guys want to be dinks, that's fine. If you guys want to be polyamorous and go hunting for girls together, that's fine. But make sure that you are clear on what that ideal partner is, because that gives you kind of a baseline to say, okay, I'm looking for this, and you can match it with the list that we did yesterday on nice to haves and deal breakers, and you can be like, I'm looking for this, and this is kind of my ideal. And some of these are nice to have, some of these are deal breakers if you can't do this kind of stuff. And when you go out on dates and when you're talking on the dating apps, which I don't really recommend, but a lot of guys do it, so I do fucking counsel guys through that shit. Guys who are, when you're on these things and you're talking to women, dating is really qualifying them to see if they belong in your life, right? You're the one kind of leading your own adventure. You're the fucking star of your own movie, and they're going to be supporting characters. They're going to be, co-stars in that movie. They're going to be the other person in that adventure, right? And if they're not on the same page as you, that adventure is going to be two separate stories. And it's going to be very difficult to commingle that shit. So, when you're going out and dating, you got to evaluate them against something. And if you don't know your own values, you don't know your own standards, you don't know your own boundaries, you don't know what you want, you don't know how you're going to react in some bullshit times, and how, if you want to be the leader, wear the pants in that relationship, then how are you going to direct them to trust you on that leadership because you have a fucking place you're going with it? If you don't figure that shit out first, it's going to be kind of, crapshoot. You're going to go out and date and be like, okay, I just wasn't feeling it. There wasn't any chemistry. Okay, cool. Then next. And the first girl that you're like physically or pheromonally or biologically attracted to, you're like, okay, let's see if she wants to fucking get married in 18 months. And then like, you didn't check to see if she was going to be a viable partner for you in the way that you think and your values and your standards, because you're not aware of them. So that's what I'm trying to get you to do, is be aware of what your ideal partner looks like. And you can put in physical. She's got to have a nice ass. She wants to fuck a lot. Cool. But definitely get into the values. Get into the core, how she's going to respond to fucking traumatic events, how she's going to respond to suffering in the world, how she gives compassion to people. And you don't have to fucking think the same. Like, I very much appreciate bleeding heart compassionate people. Because I have less of that in my soul. I'm very compassionate about people I can co-create things with, but like, for instance, I don't like homeless people. Like, I have compassion for them or whatever, but like, we don't really see eye to eye on a lot of things, and I just don't have that kind of compassion where my partner, she's like very, very compassionate about all that stuff. And I appreciate that about her. I'm just not in that kind of mindset. So Mostly because I worked for a homeless shelter for 3 fucking years, and I met them all, and I had long conversations. I used to think I was compassionate about that, but then I realized, like, I'm gonna go off a little tangent here. Where I live and San Francisco County, they are the best counties in the world as far as aid and assistance is concerned. Um, and if you live in my county, Ventura County in Southern California, and you are homeless, it's because you want to be. Right? They will give you a job. They will give you laptops. They will give you food. They will give you places to sleep. They will give you clothes for job interviews. They'll set you up with interviews. Like if you want to be on the streets, you can, but you don't have to. Not in my county. Now, other areas in the country, homelessness is a problem because there are no options. I have compassion for that, but I don't have compassion here. Like, if you want out, you can get out, and unless you fight people in the homeless shelter or you do a lot of drugs in the shelter, you get helped by the system like crazy here. And I realize not all fucking governments are like that. So I think as a whole, I have compassion for it, but I don't really have the. If you can pick yourself up by your bootstraps and do the thing, I feel like you ought to, and be a functioning member of society and give to the world and not limit yourself on fight, flight, freeze, bond, fear. Right? Anyway, that tangent aside, who's your ideal partner? Do they like homeless people? and how are they going to respond to the trauma and drama in the world? I will try to pull this worksheet out of the course that I did a few years ago and stick it in the link below. It might not be there today, but as I go through and sweep through and add all the blog posts and the accompanying homework assignments and everything to all the videos from January, it'll be there. Like if you see this in mid-February or whatever, like all the structure behind it will be there. So yeah, that's today's video on the ideal partner exercise. And I will see you guys tomorrow. I think we're talking about relationships. What are we talking about tomorrow? Oh yeah, same kind of thing for relationship goals. So if you want to see that, please subscribe and hit the little bell button, and then you'll get a notification when the new video comes out, and then you can watch it and follow through and get more self-awareness so you can make your dating life fun and better. What was my old tagline? Date more, date better. Make dating fun. Yeah, I don't know. It's been 2 years. So so that you can make dating fun and clear and get what you actually want out of your relationships. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for joining me. Until then, stay awesome.